So
Good.
we are back, guys. Yeah. No, we're gonna go back and forth. I've kind of given up the whole intro thing and just thought I'd be more organic with you guys. I talk to most of you guys in the space on a weekly basis, whether it's on social media or if you guys have my number, I'm pretty good about doing that as well. So today we have a special guest for you guys. We have Chris Eggers. Is it Eggers or Edgers? Because it's double G.
Eggers, yeah, like a
Eggers.
scrambled egg. Yep.
Oh, perfect. Easy peasy. I got the chance to meet Chris or a little bit or get to know who he was and a little bit of what he does in our space and out of our space through the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce. And I think I can't remember the full topic on that one, but we had another person on there. You were one of the panelists, and I was just like in awe of what you're doing, a little bit of your background, which kind of gave me a little bit of anxiety today thinking about just your journey and kind of where we're at now. And I'm like, and now he's on my podcast. So yeah, welcome. Thank you for giving me the time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and you as well. Thanks for making the time. And it was it was an webinar on AI and its different use cases in cannabis. Yeah, it was a great panel. Chris Boudreau was there, Christian Blake, a couple other folks.
Yes, now I do remember because you fit in perfectly into that topic, even though it was coming from a different end of things. But yes, I love our panels that we have. Usually it's once a month, but now we're doing in-person ones as well. So I'm excited to kick that off here in the Inland Empire chapter. Where are you coming out of?
So I physically live in the Sierras. I live in Truckee, California. My wife is from a small town on the west shore of Lake Tahoe called Tahoe City. They have a restaurant and a couple other small businesses in town. And we got up here about 3 years ago. We met in San Francisco and then came up here about 3 years ago.
Oh my God. The reason I made that face is so random story, but I'm going to say it. Long story short, I'm taking all these like Instagram stories and homegirl is like, yo, I'm across from you in the truck or in Truckee.
Yep.
I am not around that area enough to know all the different little cities. So I'm like, babe, do you see like a truck around? And I'm thinking she's just like, oh, like a cute word. Like, girls be adding like IE to everything. Like, oh, that's trashy, especially if you have little kids, all the little like everything becomes like pixie stick.
My daughter comes into my office in the morning, and then anytime I'm coming in here to do some work, she runs in and says huggy, huggy, huggy. So you can throw IE after anything. Yeah. Yep.
So he was like, babe, that's like the city right next door. And I was like, oh shit, the whole time, because there was like these little cabins right next to us and there was trucks coming by. And so now I know where Truckee is. And yeah, it was a good winter. I'm sure you guys enjoyed that. I mean, you guys
we've gotten hammered. Yeah, we've gotten hammered the last couple of seasons, but summertime, springtime, honestly, fall, like September is my favorite month here, but we went on the boat today for the first time. It's, weather's gorgeous, and it's, super short drive, I think, to the Bay Area where we have a lot of clients and a lot of presence. So I'll be having my first cup of coffee tomorrow morning in downtown Oakland, just get up, hit the road. It's an easy drive. So we really like it.
What's the drive?
It's like 2.5 hours. Yeah.
That's an easy drive. Well, I guess that's kind of like
in the morning, get some work done, take some calls. I leave super early, so I'm in downtown Oakland, by 8:30 or 9.
Okay.
Meetings and meeting with clients. So
nice. Okay. So before we dive into just the day-to-day that you're going through, can you kind of tell us who you are and what you've built?
Yeah, absolutely. So I founded CC Security Solutions and TLBC Inc. They hold various licenses. CCSS is the consulting arm of the business, and we very quickly evolved to like a single point of contact for cannabis security. So we are an integration company, technology company, and a guard company as well. And TLBC holds some of those licenses through the state of California. Previous to that, I was a police officer in Oakland and San Francisco for a collective 12-ish years, about half of my time in Oakland and about half my time in San Francisco. Met my wife in San Francisco. a couple years ago. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We moved up here a couple years ago, met my wife in the city. And then a couple years later, we moved up here. And that's when I quit law enforcement and got into consulting. I've always had an affinity for the plant. I have always found and thought of the plant in a positive manner based on experience I've seen, firsthand with some family members of mine that use cannabis medically, and never really bought into. There's a ton of bias in law enforcement, as we all know. I'm not the first to say it. Never bought into it, and thought that consulting was a way that I could use my skill set post law enforcement. And it's been a journey. So today we're about 40 employees deep. We're a little over 3 years old, and we've evolved to a place where we are unapologetically disruptive to the status quo of cannabis security, and most importantly, our clients are successful. So it's been a journey, as anyone who operates in cannabis knows. It's a wild ride, but the people are amazing, and I think that's been one of the most. I'd say that's probably meeting some of the people that I don't know if I would have met otherwise, has been one of the most fulfilling things in this journey so far, and we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Few things on that I want to kind of touch back on is I don't know if we were recording yet, but this is what was tripping me out and giving me a little anxiety, is knowing that you're, would you say retired PD, or is that?
Not
Oh,
retired. I just quit. So
okay.
I got paid for like 2 months after I quit, because they didn't know. They're like, well, you're not getting fired. I'm like, nope. They're like, and you're not going to another agency. Nope. And you're too young to retire. Yep.
Yep.
And so like,
That
I was
would
like,
be
here's my stuff. Like, I'll see ya.
tune in. Okay. Okay. So my mind's wrapping around something like that, because you built your career. You said 12 years?
About 12, a little over 12 years.
Wow. That's quite some time. You obviously trained your mind to become that and get into that. So you obviously took some time to get there. So it was quite a bit of a journey. So I want to back up a little bit for you to just cut out and just start this. Was there something, did you already have a relationship with the plant that was kind of your reason of like, this is just not what I am, for me, I'm always a true believer that we have all been given a purpose, and we've got to find, that's the whole game in life, is finding how to fulfill that. And was there something like to you that you saw that you were, doing maybe on a day-to-day basis that was mundane or wasn't fulfilling to you, like in your spirit, mentally, physically, that made you just say, fuck it, I'm done with this shit, and I'm going to do what I feel is more aligned with what my being is made for?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple different factors there. There's a few professional factors and then a few personal. So on the personal side, met my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and it was very clear early on that she wanted to move back home at some point, and if this was my person, I was going to leave the Bay Area, and so that's like kind of the personal side of things, of how the thought process really started getting going, of like, okay, I'm not going to be in San Francisco forever. What can I do? What would I like to do? And where can I add value? And so now, leading to the professional side, in parallel to that, I was incredibly unhappy as a police officer. The profession has a long way to go in a lot of different ways, and this could be in and of itself like an 8-hour convo. But I was just unhappy with what I was doing. I was unhappy around, honestly, a majority of my coworkers. Just the mentality was a little bit different. How I viewed being a police officer was very much different than a lot of my colleagues, in that I always viewed myself as a salesman. Like, my job is to. I never got into law enforcement to be like the rough and tumble, like hands-on, that was never, that's not my personality. That's not how I'm wired. I'd rather talk to you for 5 minutes than fight with you for 30 seconds. And so, it just increasingly became unhappy with what I was doing. And I started my career in Oakland, and Oakland and San Francisco are way different as cities and as cops. So, in Oakland, I was used to operating by myself. No one's coming for you. You got to figure it out. So de-escalation is a big key word that came out of the last few years, but we were doing that in 2009, to go home. I love Oakland, but it is a rough place, can be a rough place. And so, you've got to just figure it out, and you're not going to do it fighting, and you're not going to do it, with tools on your tool belt. You've got to, make some relationships. You've got to come to terms. You've got to hash it out. And there's a golden rule. Can I cuss on the?
Yeah.
Okay. So, there's like a golden rule, like anywhere else, just don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
And you get really far, right? So I had a great time in Oakland PD. I spent a lot of my time in East Oakland, still have great relationships out there. Really enjoyed it. San Francisco, there's like a ton of cops, in my opinion. So you didn't have to really be good at any one thing. I'm not knocking the entire department, but that department especially has just a long way to go in terms of training and tactics and how we operate. And so back to my affinity for the plant, my curiosity for the plant, my experience with the plant. I have a few family members that have used cannabis in various ways medically, and I've seen the transition. I've seen the positive impact that it's had on their lives. So in parallel to that, and I am trying not to be long-winded, but I was watching SFPD build out their regulatory arm, if you will. And, law enforcement is increasingly relied upon on a local level to be the regulatory arm of commercial cannabis businesses. And, I just thought that I could add a lot of value to the industry and to operators. And I spoke to a bunch of operators. I made a bunch of connections prior to leaving, just like, a little bit out of curiosity, a little bit out of doing my due diligence, a little bit, just to kind of get out there a little bit. And there seemed to be this huge disconnect. And I thought someone like myself could come in to some degree and do several things, one of which help operators manage the increasing law enforcement presence on the commercial side. I thought that was very much needed. I saw it in my day to day. I've said this a couple times, but I remember I was a footbeat officer on Market Street where there's a lot of tourists and foot traffic, right? And there's a new dispensary that just opened up, and it was on my beat. So I walked by, said what's up to the, a manager, somebody working there. They invited me in. They're like, "Can you come in?" I'm like, "Can I?" I was like, I joked. I was like, "I don't have a warrant. Like, can I come in?" And we had like a great interaction, gave him my card. This is where I normally post up. If you need anything, let me know. It was an awesome interaction, and one that, very obviously took them by surprise. They weren't expecting that out of me. And most people, as a police officer, they see the uniform, they don't see the person. And I never took that personally. Like I get it. I've had bad interactions. I've had good interactions. I see a uniform.
Yeah.
But sitting outside in the middle of the street with his car in park was my supervisor. And my supervisor waved me over and told me very explicitly to stay out of those places. And, I know you and I don't know each other incredibly well, but I had a big issue with that type of authority. So my response was, listen, like, there's no policy that says that. This is a retail location. They're allowed to be here. We should encourage them being here. And the day after Thanksgiving, you're going to send me over, to the Gap to stand in front of there for 12 hours. So if you feel that way, and if I'm violating some policy, please write it in an email so that I can have documentation that, you want me to stay out of these places. And, that still is very prevalent today. And that didn't sit well with me. So, beyond skill set, beyond some of the things that, I felt like I could bring to the table to add value to the industry, that was one of them. And one that I saw from the inside out. So, we hope to bring a very unique perspective when we add value to clients, across the industry.
Wow. That's just like, that's a crazy journey and such a crazy transition, in my opinion. Well, I'm happy that you went with your gut feeling, and I can resonate with that myself also, because I came from corporate banking and I did it for almost 20 years, I did it right out of high school. I didn't do any college, and I kind of worked my way up. So it was kind of comfortable, but I always felt like I was living two lives. Like you said, I never never hung out with any of my coworkers, and I was kind of like almost a black sheep for that because there's always happy hours. It's maybe similar for, PD. I feel like it could be just because I've, in the banking world, we also served the different organizations in our neighborhood, and happy hour is the thing. And I'm like, my happy hour is like home because I can't do what I normally do and I don't drink alcohol. So totally can resonate with you having to just leave. And, it seems kind of like cold turkey, but I think when you feel it in your gut, like it's a right decision, everything kind of falls in place, especially if you're willing to like grind it out and put in the work where it needs to be. Being intentional as well. I think the universe is receptive to that. And so, love the fact that you weren't really like side eyeing the plant. Now, did you consume yourself? Like, did you consume in high school, maybe? Because
Oh
obviously
yeah,
you
I
can't
consumed.
consume
I consume. This is in my background. I can say this. Yeah, I consumed previous to being in law enforcement. You know,
they test that, right? And I think by hair, and that's like 7 years. So you would have had to been clear of it. I know this because of my dad. He apparently tried to be a
yeah, I
PD.
can't remember. So I worked. Obviously, I did. I went through the process like twice, right? So I went through the process with Oakland and then with San Francisco. I can't recall if they took hair or not.
Oh,
I remember doing a regular drug test. I can't recall if they took hair or not. And they ask about that. Um, it's interesting going through a background process is super interesting because you never know what they're really honing in on or not.
mm, interesting.
That wasn't a big point of contention. I ran track and cross country. I was on scholarship at Chico State, and so I
Oh,
ran through college.
nice.
But I also went to Chico State, so
Okay.
I experienced a little bit, but again, like what I saw in cannabis use was, and I'm not making this as a claim, but this is what I saw of a very close family member who battled alcoholism for quite some time, and I've never battled alcoholism, so to some degree, he still is based on the conversations we have. And he uses cannabis and used cannabis as a way to break away from alcohol, and that was his journey. That I'm not. I have to say this, like not making any claims, but that was his journey,
Right.
and a relationship that was incredibly close to me growing up. One that I saw really deteriorate, with alcohol, and then one that now is thriving, in part because of cannabis. So that was my experience. Then you get into law enforcement and they teach you it is the devil's lettuce. And if they say,
Wow.
they're lying. I mean, the very last course I took was up in Mendocino County, and it was a cannabis DUI course. Um, and
Oh,
it was an
yes.
I took the course. I knew I was leaving. I was,
Same.
yeah.
Oh, it's
I
not
took
the
the course just to get at the time my girlfriend and I to go up to the coast and get out of San Francisco, right?
Yeah.
That's why. But it was the instructor pointed at me and my name placard. I'll never forget this. And SFPD Chris Eggers, and he points at my name tag and he's like, the reason for the opioid epidemic in your city and how bad it is right now is because of cannabis. I'm
Mm,
like,
wow.
man, like this is an instructor teaching cops that are like buying into this, and
Yeah.
I think one thing about law enforcement and training, and I say this because I'm developing a course in part to help best understand how law enforcement should regulate the space that they're in, right? And the wheelhouse that like comes into their world.
Right.
Because I feel like if we don't set boundaries and we just let law enforcement, come in and decide how they want to regulate it, we're gonna see problems. I mean, it's just a disconnected industry with a lot of issues, and that's a whole nother convo. But that was one big takeaway where I was like, this is wild. Like this is a state certified instructor that is telling these things to these cops that are like buying into it and like really absorbing it. And I think we have plenty of data, in my opinion, to show that
Yeah.
cannabis is not like leading to an opioid epidemic. And I can say this too, and I can speak on this. I am an expert in this. I worked undercover for the city of Oakland for quite some time. And
Oh,
I've sat in an undercover capacity, I've sat next to well over 100 people who actively have a needle in their arm. Okay.
Mm.
And a lot, I don't care who we're talking to or what we're talking about, humans enjoy telling their story. And I would ask, like how, respectfully, like, how did you get here? Right. And it was
Yeah.
always pills. I had never heard a story beyond pills. I never heard, oh, I smoked a joint and then got here. I just didn't hear that story. The story evolved from, I started drinking or not. I started experimenting with pills. Physiologically, the high that gives you is the same as heroin to some degree. And
Mhm.
so the withdrawal is also similar, right? And then the evolution, a really common story I heard was, well, I was kind of couch surfing, using pills. I became addicted. Pills are incredibly expensive. I got on the street and realized that the same high was a fraction of the price, and it was a drug called heroin. And now we have fentanyl, right? And so, um, in my opinion, I don't believe that cannabis um,
Gateway.
is a gateway drug. I mean, I've got two kids, right? And so I've said this before too. If in 13 years I open up my daughter's sock drawer and I see cannabis, we're gonna have a conversation. It'll be a conversation. If I
Mhm.
open up that sock drawer and I see pills, like, I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
I'm you
Yeah.
know, and so it's just different, right? And I'm
Oh, yeah.
also one of the or not anymore, but when I left law enforcement, I was what's called a DRE, a drug recognition expert. And what that means is I went through a ton of training to be able to identify poly drug use, essentially by looking at people and conducting very, very basic tests.
Wow.
Um, and less than 2% of police officers in California hold that designation. So, I can speak to this topic on from an educational or side of things, but also working undercover and speaking to folks who are self-described addicts. Um, that was part of my duties, was to be in environments like that. And so, I've got a really unique perspective, and I don't really appreciate somebody who doesn't have that perspective and doesn't have that knowledge telling, especially in an educational setting, that this is fact. I
Mhm.
struggle in a big way.
Yeah, all fair. I did not know that you had expertise that go that deep, and I keep forgetting you also did undercover work, or however you want to say you were an undercover officer, I should say. But that's very interesting as far as making sure that you kind of like were the voice for some people. Obviously, we all know in this space, we still talk about the lack of education across the board, whether it's culturally or in our own states, no matter how much cannabis is medicinal or recreational here. So, I think with you, did you have kind of maybe an influence on other people that were around you that kind of started to look at it differently, even though
Uh,
their training was so embedded in that specific way, or are they just so diehard all about being the blue, which is fine?
no, I mean, yeah. So it's there's definitely a facet of officers that are like, thin blue line no matter what. And you know,
No
I
go.
was a field training officer toward the end of my career, meaning when you graduated the academy, I was the face that you saw in the police car day one.
Oh,
And I trained, folks from all walks of life. The feedback I got, and I'm a firm believer that, like, the feedback you should listen to isn't necessarily from your supervisors, but it's the people that you manage, right? I don't like we're a linear organization. That's how I like to think of our organization. Like, at the end of the day, I'm the CEO, I'm the founder, and my name is on the door. So if a decision needs to get made, at the end of the day, I do have to make certain decisions, but how we get there can be a collaborative effort, right? And so I don't like to speak of like above or below, but generally, I think you should take your feedback from folks below you, people that you manage, right? Rather than your boss who tends to be disconnected. And whether it's banking or law enforcement or
yes.
cannabis, like, we've all seen that disconnect in the hierarchy of our own organizations. And the feedback I got from folks that turned out to be really good cops, folks that I would want to respond to my dad's house or my wife or my sister, on their worst day, their feedback to myself and my partner was, hey, your guys' approach is like way different than anyone else's. I went through 3 other cops in this field training phase, and like what you and you guys do and how you do it is so different. And it's just, I think, trying to be, again, look at law enforcement, or look at my job as more of a salesman rather than like, you know, um, rough and tumble. I'm struggling with like a better way to say it, but I don't need to go like grab you and tell you what to do and move you around here and there. Like, let's talk about it for a minute, and see where we're at. And, at the end of the day, I do need to make a decision, whether that is sign here, go in handcuffs, leave, some sort of action needs to happen. But how we get there, there's a bunch of different ways to get there. And I found in my approach, just trying to be as much like myself was most advantageous. And I think in part, people didn't expect, a cop to be, relatable. I have like a bunch of tattoos, and like I would always roll my sleeves up. I think that part of the reason I was successful in undercover work was it was to me, it was just easier. In uniform, I always felt super awkward. And even toward the end of my career, like walking on Market Street, I'd walk by a storefront and see like my reflection, like, oh shit, like, oh wait,
Yeah.
well, I'm the cops, like I'm the police.
Yeah.
I never got used to it.
Yeah.
But there's a cultural mentality in most industries, but as we all know, especially in law enforcement, and there's some really good ones and there's some really bad ones. And I think the really good ones want to learn from outside of the industry. And, that's one of the things that I found really interesting. I've said this stat before, but I've taken like about 70 extra trainings as a cop in my 13 years, and only 2 of them were also offered to civilians. And I don't know a single industry where you can get better being like in this sort of incestual environment where you don't learn from the outside.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've seen it in movies, so I'm sure you have tons of story being undercover in Oakland, especially. I mean, maybe it's changed since you covered that city, but crazy journey. I mean, and now you're doing security specifically. Do you do security outside of cannabis?
We do. So
Okay.
we're starting. So,
Yes.
I got into consulting, and I was designing, sites and helping folks with applications. And then it was time to do the doing. And I saw this huge disconnect in the status quo. Most operators today, just with security, have, multiple vendors. You've got the consultant helping with the app, somebody designing the space. You've got somebody else doing the install in the space, somebody else managing the alarm, somebody else managing video monitoring. Then you've got a different vendor for guards. And when something goes wrong, everyone points their finger at everyone else. And we learned that very, very quickly, getting into the industry, that this is broken, this is disconnected, and it's expensive. And so where we've evolved today is a single point of contact. We're unapologetically disruptive to the status quo. We are unapologetically chasing our own carrot. And one of my favorite musicians of all time is Nipsey Hussle, who says, stay in your own lane. There's never any traffic in your own lane. And that's what we do every day. We're not concerned about, folks who view us as competition and things like that. What's most important is our client success, period. And that is lost today, and something we take incredibly seriously. So, transitioning from law enforcement to that, it was certainly a little bit different, but what I got excited about was the opportunity to solve a problem. And I
Yeah.
continued to see problems that we can solve. So we continue to grow, like this. And in very difficult times, we've grown this company from 0, or 1 employee to about 40 employees.
Wow,
Uh,
it's
and
impressive.
one thing on my bucket list was to give somebody a job at one point in my life. I thought that would be super cool. And it is, and we're doing it, we've done it over 40 times. So, we continue to look at ways we can solve the problem. And that's how we met on the AI webinar. We're looking at how we're utilizing technology, to increase situational awareness, reduce police response times, save clients money. We have 2 very big wins we're excited about, both in Oakland. In one case, one client is saving about 100 grand a year on their security spend. And another client is saving about 200 grand a year on their security spend. And these are huge, large facilities with a lot of moving parts. but they're incredibly successful. They're saving a bunch of dough. And we believe that, our model is changing the paradigm of cannabis security today.
Oh, I had no idea about the different layers of vendors for security because you're right. From the consumer's perspective, I just see a security guard, one or two maybe lingering in retail office. Obviously, if you are in the cannabis space or run or an operator, you probably know there's, a couple cameras here and there. But you see all the horror stories on Instagram, on social media. I mean, all the way from, shit that happens in your parking lot, shit that happens around your building, not necessarily like actually break-ins or anything like that. So have you had any, I mean, I guess, can you give us like one interesting story that maybe didn't, maybe people aren't too aware of that could happen, or maybe something that may be unique?
We got into the guard space because we were managing for a client. We were managing one of their inherited guard contracts. And so it was not our guards. It was not our personnel. We were managing them. We were kind of overseeing them. And the facility got hit. And what we realized after doing an investigation was that security was changing some access control software settings. So when the bad guys showed up, they had a lot less work to do to get into the facility. And then the multi-vendor blame game happened because the guard company is blaming the install company is blaming the guard company. And we said, hey, we can do this better, right? And so, I mean, one of our non-negotiables, to answer your question, is to service our clients. I cannot be more clear about that. There's, I think, a huge need for that in many industries, especially cannabis, but also especially security. What I've found to be true in security, absent of cannabis, just the general security space, is that there's people that are selling you like the silver bullet. This thing will solve your problem. I'm unaware of any one thing that solves, general problems that operators have. And so where we really shine in our carrot that we're chasing is to bring in different pieces of the pie, manage them in a manner that holds us accountable. So our clients don't see multiple vendors. They just see us. And when the bad thing happens or something doesn't work and we don't claim to be perfect, things go wrong, cameras go out, a guard might be late, things happen, right? Who do you want to be shoulder to shoulder with in the trenches to solve the problem? And under that model, what we've realized is that uptime is significantly increased and cost is drastically decreased. So you get a better solution for a cheaper price. And it's a model that, we're unapologetic about. Being an entrepreneur is incredibly difficult, but coming from an athletic background, if I make a joke that, I play track because it's a running sport, but you have to be mentally tough to succeed in running. And you've probably already recognized that. Nobody but you knows how hard you're pushing yourself or not. You can fake it all day long. You can look incredibly tired. You can put your hands on your knees. You could be sweating, but only you really know, like, did you really give it your all? And it's the same when you're building a business. And that's, why it's so, I wouldn't say it's easy because what we're doing is hard, but why the path we choose to service our clients and serve them first is, the best path forward, but one that's not a difficult one for us to wrap our head around because we're also trying to build something. We're all very much alike in that we've, taken the jump in a very real way into this industry that is phenomenal, filled with a lot of great people and adding a lot of value in a lot of different ways. And we're just trying to add value in our small way as well.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, security is top notch. It's needed. And, especially if we're talking about some of the retailers that are up in the Oakland, San Francisco, just Bay Area. Obviously, LA's LA. I'm here in Inland Empire area, so they're slowly building out, licensed shops around here.
Right.
But everything's different, I would say, from NorCal to SoCal as far as just our day-to-day crime and things like that apply to this type of security. Very interesting to hear you just be able to finally, it seems like For me, I always think of when kids want to be a police officer, it's because you see them being heroes, you see them helping people, you see them being of service. And I feel like with you, that wasn't kind of the ball game when you got there, and now you're kind of still fulfilling that in your kind of own way. And so, your own academy, you're building your own Chris Academy, where you're building the guidelines of what you expect your people to be doing and servicing people. Curious, do you hire people that have that type of background? Did you bring in some friends that you're like, hey, come and do this with me? Anything like that? Usually, when you're an entrepreneur, you got to build and kind of see if there's anybody around you that you can, put their assets or put their skills to become assets for your company, and kind of build out that way. Because 40 employees, I come from, like I said, the banking world, and to build a company that actually has 40 employees, that's pretty good and structured, I must say.
Yeah, we're 100% bootstrapped. We've gotten the attention from a few small investors, which has allowed us to start to explore a small seed round to help us grow and expand and do other things, because we are now servicing clients outside of cannabis. We're working even with municipalities. So early on, my firm was selected by the DCR down in LA as subject matter experts in cannabis security, and we developed a bunch of educational content for social equity applicants around cannabis security. But then we started organically talking about risk management and insurance and how that affects your business, and those different criterias and rules you need to follow, and then law enforcement interactions and how does that work. And we've worked with the city of Portland, the city of Oakland, the city of San Francisco, a lot of areas. We recently hosted a training for social equity applicants out of New Jersey. Every single one that graduated that program got a free download of our book. Anywhere where we can find a way to add value to somebody else in this industry is incredibly important. I was fortunate enough to meet some really cool people who were, industry insiders for a very long time. That kind of gave me a shot, that allowed me to tell my story. Because if you just look at the surface, you could say, okay, cop, don't want to work with that person in this industry, and that happens. I mean, there's still people today in the industry that may not want to work with us, or I see the comments once in a while, being an ex-cop, and that's okay, because none of those people know me personally or know what I'm about, and that's okay. If a bunch of people who knew what I was about and interacted with me had those things to say, that we would have that would be truth to that, right? But I don't pay attention to folks that I've never met, that I've never interacted with. It's just looking for ways to add value. And then, as we grow this business, and we're relying on our employees, I'm absolutely, you asked, do we hire, like, who do we kind of hire? We hire a ton of different types of people, and, everybody in the organization will add value in some way. And
Smoke while he comes back. Oh, there he goes.
okay, am I back?
You're back. Phone
Sorry
call?
about that. Maybe I think I got Wi-Fi drive-by. That's a Rico Lamite from Hyatt Nines. You'll hear him say that a lot. The Wi-Fi bandits will occasionally shoot up.
Yeah, that is for
sure. I was starting to tell a very brief story. One of my very first salaried employee, really good dude. I can't go into details about the thing, but he basically says, hey, Spidey senses about X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, break that down. Like, awesome, but break that down for me. And he didn't know me incredibly well. He had gone through our hiring process, but I have folks that manage that mostly. We've gotten to the point where I don't touch every single employee's onboarding process, but
right.
he knew our hiring manager and somebody in our organization a lot better than he knew me at the time. But he was like, hey, got some spidey senses about X, Y, and Z. And it was great because we got ahead of it, added some more value to a client. And I pulled him aside. I'm like, how and why, did you come to this conclusion? And his response to me, he knew I was a cop previously and didn't know me as a person. So we hadn't really broken bread that way and really kind of broed out. And he just tells me, he's like, Chris, this is his words. He's like, Chris, I'm from the streets, and I'm like that. And he was almost, I told him, I'm like, man, you almost seem like embarrassed to be telling me this. He's like, well, you're my boss. I'm like, man, if you have some experience that and now you're showing me that you're willing to, include me in that to add value to our clients and, be stand up in this situation. Like that's incredibly valuable. So, I'm excited about hiring folks and giving them an opportunity. And certainly if we can, paying them more than they did at, let's say a previous guard company. But because our business is not just guards, we're an installation technology and now drone company, we have a lot of different opportunities working for us. So the result of that, we've been able to retain, really, really good folks that have typically bounced around in the security industry, a lot. And now, we're giving them opportunities on a workforce development side, training some of our armed guards to be Part 107 drone pilots, which is a really cool skill set and one that I think absolutely is needed because I'm a firm believer that in the next, sooner than later, a big bulk of the guard industry will be removed and replaced with technology.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think we're hearing that across the board with just AI in general for most, different kind of business models. But wow, that is very interesting. Curious when your wife, or did your wife and you do this transition together, or was this something that you were like, okay, wifey, or I have to tell you, I am no longer going to be a police officer. Just
Yeah,
curious.
she's my wife. I can tell you, I'm the luckiest guy alive. I'm so fortunate to have met my wife. I'm so fortunate she chose me as her person. I'm incredibly lucky, and I'm head over heels. So moving to out of the Bay Area and a potential career change because I very briefly thought, okay, well, an easy move is just go be a cop somewhere else. But my heart wasn't in that place. And law enforcement's an industry where if you don't want to be there, you shouldn't be there. There's a lot of jobs where if you don't want to be there, you can still be there. Law enforcement, in my
Yes.
opinion, if you don't want to be there, you shouldn't be there. And my heart wasn't in it anymore, and it was time for me to go. Professionally, I was unhappy, as I mentioned, and she wanted to move up here. So it wasn't me telling her. It was COVID happened, and
Okay.
that shook a lot of things up for a lot of people. And it was at that time where, so we did everything out of order on purpose. This is, I like telling the story, but we knew we wanted to get married. I knew right away she was my person. And so when we got to that point and she's like, I want to start a family. We weren't
Yeah.
married yet. And that was our path. We got really
Right.
fortunate, got pregnant right away with our daughter, who's now 3.5. And so right when we got pregnant was right when COVID happened. And that's right when I quit my job and right when we moved up here. So, a lot of personal and professional changes happened in that period of time. And
Period. Yeah. Yeah.
super
Same
fortunate.
here. Yeah. I have a 5 and a 3-year-old. So, also during, I call it, they're my pandemic babies. Not so much my daughter. She was on the bricks of where when it was like about to
Right.
open, but, pregnant during the time, having to give birth with the whole, you got to put the mask on.
Yeah.
Um, I'm fucking trying to push a baby. Fuck that mask
Yeah.
is what
Yeah.
happened there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Cheers.
the
Yeah.
experience from that to then also the like it starting in, I think 2020 was crazy because I had started hosting women events, and literally it was like March 8th was my event, and then they shut us down like the week
It
after.
was a week after that. Absolutely right.
Yeah, and so at that point, I decided, my husband was completely supportive of it, but I think we started doing work from home, something like that, and I was working at the bank, and I'm like, this is kind of interesting." Of course, I only had one, so working from home wasn't too bad. Now that I have 2 running around working from home, it's fucking nuts. It's
Yeah.
fucking nuts.
Yeah. I'm surprised my
But
daughter hasn't come
I
in
was gonna
yet.
say,
Um,
as you can tell, I missed I like disappeared for 2 seconds because he came in as happy as can be. So you feel bad. You're like, and then, they don't know what the fuck we're doing
right.
here.
Yeah.
They will eventually. I always say, sometimes when we're setting up, my daughter likes to come in here and she'll pretend to put the headphones on just because they see, what we're doing. But, life is life. And I think as long as you guys, work together, like you said, it's so important that she's your person, my husband's my person. It makes a difference in the journey of being an entrepreneur
It
because,
does.
I listen to a lot of I wouldn't say motivational speakers because they're just entrepreneurs that have like little clips. But they do a lot of social media work to give back, I
Right.
think, as far as what they believe. And one of them really talks about if you want to have a successful entrepreneur journey, not that all of them are successful, definitely a lot of hard work. It also comes down to like your partner in life, because if you have a partner that's not going to be supportive of, the shits of you being like out for 2-3 days to handle business, things like that all come into play, especially when you add little humans to the dynamic. And so I'm happy that you guys are, moving and grooving, jiving. And that's so important because it makes things so much more like harmonious as far as like, why the fuck am I doing this? Like, why am I stressing myself out? And then I see them and I'm like, that's why, you
Yep.
guys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I'll take any pointers. You're a couple years ahead of me, so I'll take any pointers you
Oh,
have.
they're fun. You
I
said
mean,
3
I have a 3-month-old and a 3.5-year-old.
months? 3
Yeah.
months is like, it's either crazy or not crazy. Like, oh, it's great. You just sit there, give them a little food. They're quiet. Like when they start running around and like climbing on things and like tasting things. And I'm like,
Yep.
especially
He's
when you
not
have
quite there
two.
yet.
Yeah, like
Yeah. Not
one's putting on
quite
their shoes, one's taking off their shoe, or one's like, finally both of them are potty trained now. And so
there. Oh,
that's
good job.
really
There you
fun.
go. That's a big win. Huge win.
Yeah,
Huge
your
win.
your 3
But
month
yeah,
is the boy, right?
this is a tough journey. You're experiencing it. We've talked about it. It's if you don't have I think about this very often because I know how lucky I am. I don't have a lot of the challenges that some people do who might not have the support system of their spouse. And I'm so glad to hear that you do. I think I remember when you said that on we had a couple meetings previous to the webinar and you had talked about your husband and looking forward to meeting him sometime. You guys got to come up. We'll send you down the river this summer. But, it's so incredibly
Here's the
important to
trick.
have that. This is hard enough. It's hard enough
Yeah.
on a daily basis. There's a lot of challenges. It's an emotional roller coaster. I've found though that being a parent just such a advantage because when there's a tough day, right? I don't want to ever have my daughter think like I hope dad had a good day in his office, because I want to play with him, right? I
Mhm.
just want to be
Yeah,
like as constant as I can when I'm not in work mode.
yeah,
And then there's a ton of challenges. And so how do you manage stress? And I'm not perfect. No, no, certainly no one is, but it's certainly not me. And I just try to like, okay, I know they're constantly watching and they're watching at such a young age. It's
yeah,
mind boggling how much they can absorb. So, it just kind of forces you if already that day you're not wired to like, deep breath and just,
yeah,
woosah a little bit, forces me to do that before I go out back into family mode. And
for
it's
sure.
my parents' best thing ever.
Yeah, for sure. For me, that's why I do, my non-negotiable is working out. Not just, I have to go wait. I have to touch the weights. Like mentally, it helps me. So my husband is aware of that, and he can tell too if I'm edgy or there's something going on with me. He's like, do you need a few minutes? And that makes a world of a difference. Just acknowledgement, I would say from your partner, recognizing whether, you're having a rough day, especially when you are, for me, I'm stay home mom. And so I don't really get to leave anywhere and I work from here as well. So I'm talking to like 3 and 5-year-old conversations all day long. That's on the mental side a lot for women sometimes. And I think when our husbands remember that, it's a huge deal. So I'm glad you're
I
very
I
aware and
hear my wife talk to my daughter, my son now too, but
yeah,
he's 3 months old. But I would say this. I hear my wife talking, to my daughter, and it's like it's just so loving and caring, and she's such a good mom, and I can tell you're a good mom, and it is. I took my daughter recently back to the Midwest where my dad moved, and it was a 4-day trip. Went to Ohio, layover in Denver, flew into Cleveland. And it
is
was
she
just
too?
me, just the two of
Oh
us.
my
It
god,
was
how many
just a couple weeks ago, and it was awesome. It was because I was the guy. There was no
yeah,
one else there.
you're
So
number 1 for
super
sure.
intimidating. I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit scared. First overnight trip, plus planes and all these things, but it went incredibly well. Um,
Yeah,
and we've gotten closer because of it. But I came back and I'm like, how how do you do this like every day? I knew I was doing it Monday or Friday through Monday.
Yeah.
I
It's
enjoyed it. I mean, I love being a dad. It's not like I don't want to do these things, but
yes,
I'm just
exactly.
saying, to your point, it is
Yeah.
incredibly difficult, and you do a phenomenal job. My wife does a phenomenal job, and to
Yeah.
hear you say that, that's very real, because it's like it is taxing, like mentally, to have a conversation with a 3-year-old all day and not have necessarily adult interaction.
Yeah, yeah, or trying to have, because of our relationship as far as networking and taking calls and making sure you like don't miss that hour. I'm like, fuck, I was supposed to be on a 4 o'clock call. I'm trying to like make dinner, trying to get to the gym, trying to
Yep.
make sure these kids don't like fall off something. At the same time, we're trying not to be the iPadders, as far as like, here, stick on the iPads, especially for my son. He's autistic nonverbal. And so he does not respond well to screen time, which I'm totally fine with it.
Mhm.
But things like that, being an intentional parent, I think it just all trickles down as far as like, we're a tribe, we're doing this, one has, it's kind of fine. Like the balance is between me and my husband. Cause sometimes I am like, go, 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 go. I can work, I can multitask, but he can see like that whole shit is just like, okay, that's about to boil and just blow up.
Yeah.
So we kind of feed in that way. So I think it's important to have that, especially when we have them at such little age,
So
like the 3 months.
do you have weights in the morning, or do you do it in the afternoon after your work day? Does it depend?
Um, it depends because my husband also, he works graveyard shift hours, but 12 hours a day. And so he's gone from like 8 p.m. all the way to the next morning. Totally
Sure.
off topic, guys, but I
No,
know there's
no,
moms
no,
out there and parents out there. And even like when I talk to Chris from the chamber, he's fucking hustling, trying to, you know, launch all these different businesses. He has a kid. And so I feel for the parents who have to co-parent too, like single parent and having to do these things. But
Mhm.
parenting is definitely a different story.
Yeah, it's a wild ride for sure. But of all the things that you just said, you've said a couple times too, to be intentional, which I really appreciate, and I think is a good approach, because we all have so much going on in our, what, good or bad, in our business lives. We've got a bunch going on, good or bad, in our personal lives. We've got different facts and circumstances to navigate, and no day is the same. But you know, to be intentional, which is a word you've said multiple times, I really agree with. I think if you're intentional, you at least can take a step back and think about how to improve, or what's happening in your life, right? And just, it's tough to juggle a bunch of things if you don't know what they are. But if you're intentional and you understand what they are, well, now you're at least a little bit ahead of the game, versus unaware that you've got, let's say, a partner or your spouse or someone, a different relationship, whether it be a coworker or a friend, going through something and recognizing, hey, maybe we need to check in, or how are you doing? Things like that. I mean, just every day is
Yeah.
so wonky. So I appreciate, the use of the word intentional, because I think that's, something I try to lean into every day, is just a little bit of self-improvement, but at least aware
Yes.
of how I'm operating.
Yes.
I know how I intend to come across, but you never know how you really come across. So a
Yeah.
little bit of intention on what's happening in our daily lives, and those around us.
Yes, that's so true because it trickles to even like working. Because I will feel like I wasn't so like, I'm very straightforward type of person. I don't like small talk. I don't, if there's something that's bothering me, I wear my emotions on my sleeve. People can sense it. So like sometimes I'll say something and my husband will think that it's very like cutthroat, and I didn't like mean it in that way, but just being more intention with my words and how I like, even the energy that we put out there is all a big, you know,
Yeah.
big circle of things that work
Kids
together.
absorb that. Kids absorb it. I mean, that's
Oh, he's
some
yeah.
guys,
Yeah, he's a
they
lot
absorb.
calmer than I am. When I say like intentional parenting, it's like, fuck, I lost my shit. Damn it.
Yeah.
Those are like real things that I'm like, okay, it's okay, like restart. The things that moms, I mean, I don't know if all moms, but I think most moms, beat themselves up as far as like you don't want to be the witch that just gave them everything and then when they become older, Jordan Peterson talks about this, and they have no idea like why the world is the way it is because they were handed everything, versus a mom that's like, no, you can't eat that because XYZ, but then you become that mom that's not cool, like, I don't have all the fruity drinks here and all the fun snacks. So when I have in-laws come over, I always get fucking shit like, are you serious? They don't have fucking juice? No, they don't have juice. Like Capri Suns and Doritos. And that's, partly because my kid is autistic and those things don't serve him very well. So it is fun being intentional, I would say. The older I get more intentional with what I want in my life as far as energy and who I surround myself with, from environment to people to what I watch to what I listen to what I read. So life is a roller coaster lately, but I am definitely having a lot of fun. So
good deal. Good deal. Well, I'm super stoked to have been on to have been invited on this podcast. And like I said, we had orbited around each other for quite some time just with the chamber. I'm glad we finally got to connect.
Yeah, I'm digging your story and I like what you're doing in the space. Before we let you go, I have a rapid fire. It's kind of around cannabis culture. That's what I was like scrolling back. I have 2 sets, but you're not a typical like, I've had cultivators on here. I've had influencers on here who are just heavy. So I'm like, okay, I hope these apply. You've been in the game long enough, I think. So you should be able to answer some of these.
My best.
Okay. 7 grams, indoor or sun-grown flower?
Oh yeah, this is one that ruffles a lot of feathers. Well, listen, it was recently, I think yesterday was our good friend Jason Beck's birthday, and Jason is a big indoor guy. He put me onto some I smoked with him once in Long Beach, and I was like, Jason, like I'm like really high. And he's like, I know, Chris, I know. So for that reason, I'm gonna go indoor.
Okay, that's fair. There is some fire ass indoor out, especially SoCal area. But now that our farmers are tapping into mixed lights, I'd be concerned. When you know how to grow, you can fucking nail down genetics. It's such an amazing game. But you were in good hands being with Jason, I'm pretty sure. He's also a flower judge for Emerald Cup, so that's exciting. I'm sure he's checking out all the entries. They got like fucking 300 something entries to go through, so that should be fun. There he is.
Am I back?
You're back.
Okay, my Wi-Fi is doing this thing, but okay.
Okay, we're almost done. Hang on, Wi-Fi. I was just saying you're probably in good hands with Jason anyways, even though some of the like sun-grown farmers now are tapping into like how to really do the indoor too. So that should be fun. All right, what's your favorite way to consume flower?
I either edibles or I love my vape pen.
Okay. Do you have a specific brand in the vapes? Because they're
I love Oakland extracts.
Oh, okay. Not too familiar. Wow. I haven't been out there, but I will be there August 17th through the 18th for Emerald Cup. Make sure you guys get your tickets.
Definitely. That's gonna be an awesome event.
I can't wait. All right. Have you grown your own flower before?
I have not. And we have a lot of cultivation clients. And I, constantly am like trying not to annoy them, picking their brain about different things, but it's
just get a clone. Start with a clone. Just bring a clone. At least, it's half like, it's like in its toddler phase. And then if you fuck it up after that, then you don't have a green thumb. Give it to your wife.
Got it.
You will grow it, I'm sure. But in Truckee, I don't know how good it would do out there.
Yeah, elevation and cold a lot. Yeah.
Oh well, NorCal's kind of like that. I'm sure it'll work. What's one thing that people do not know about you? This is probably pretty interesting.
One thing people don't know about me. Maybe this is kind of boring, but the first comes to mind is I love to cook. I get into let's say it's a steak. I'll like do a bunch of different renditions of steak, and then I move on to the next thing. So for a while, I just came off of this winter a slow cooker phase, just like experimenting with different
Yes.
things, and love that. So when my wife and I were dating, we were living in the city, no kids, we were going out all the time. Now, as you probably know, right,
Yeah.
there's a lot more home cooking. So that's something I really like to geek out on.
Yes, yes. You're welcome restaurants. We're the kind of parents that don't bring our 3 and 5-year-olds to a
That's
sit down.
right.
Healthier anyways.
Yep.
That's so funny. My husband was like, "I think I need an apron." I was like, "I think so. I'm liking this."
Yeah.
All right. Papers or leaves?
Ooh, papers. I would say papers.
Okay. Okay. And Cheech and Chung or half baked?
Ooh, that's such a tough one. I mean, I'm not gonna give you the like, oh, either answer. So I think I probably watched more Half Bake.
Yeah, that's it's from our time, I should say.
Yeah, yeah.
Cheech and Chung's like, obviously like old
It's
school,
incredible.
definitely like
Absolutely incredible.
part of the
Absolutely.
culture. All right, last one. Floral or gasoline strains, terps?
Um, I would say floral for my preference and my palate. I do enjoy wine, and I think maybe that's why I kind of lean toward a floral.
Okay.
But yeah, that one's an easy one for me. I prefer floral. That's more where my palate lends to.
You gotta try White Thorn Rose from Huckleberry Hill Farms. You will if you
Writing that
can
down.
if you can get it in like some sort of extract, like since you like to vape, amazing. Those will blow your mind. It's like sweet, tangy, fruity. It just hits all the markers. And I'm not a floral person. I do like gassy, stinky cheese, like permanent marker smelling
Okay.
herb. Heavy, but that particular strain, the way they grow it, there's terps in there that we don't normally get out here or in like normal indoor, I should say. Just really is expressed really nicely. So if you ever want to try some amazing flour that has just, I call it like a charcuterie. Like,
Oh,
it's like hitting all those like savory, salty. It's just, you got to try it. You got to try it.
okay.
Does your
Appreciate
wife
that.
consume or
She
does your
does occasionally. I mean, not. I mean, right now, not so much. But yeah,
Oh, she just had the baby. Yeah.
yeah.
Sometimes, it helps with PTSD, especially or PTSD. I'm sorry, not PTSD. Postpartum. Well, I guess it's kind of the same. Postpartum depression, if
Mhm.
they're going through that right after having a baby, all the hormonal changes. I know some of my girlfriends prefer tinctures because they don't want to smoke, especially if they're breastfeeding. So just curious. But
That's why
if
I could. That's why I consume. How I consume is just the smoke, with the littles and then
yes.
my fingers and all that. But yeah,
Oh, I
that's just
know.
and every
This
a different stroke for different folks. But also too, like I mean, we're in a interesting stage of the business too, so the hours can be super long, and it's just a convenience thing. But
for sure.
um, excited that you're a pre-roll judge, and hopefully you can continue to point me in the right direction come August at the Emerald Cup.
Yes. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be summertime, so it should be like super vibey. Got like live performers coming out. It should be completely packed and Jammin' Award Show is on that Sunday. So it's like party, marketplace, full on shopping if needed, Saturday. And then we have panel discussions talking about everywhere from content creators to, controversial issues, agricultural deals. And then the next day is where the actual award show ceremony starts. So some people are only getting one day, but I highly suggest two because then you get to like actually see the brand owners. And even for networking purposes, it's definitely really like worth the fun to go, at least for the award show. So I
I
hope to
got
see
my
you
full
there.
day already. I'll be
Yes.
there. I'll
Yes,
be there.
yes. Can't wait to meet the wife. But before I let you go as well, if you don't mind just giving us a plug as far as where to find you, where to get the information. If we, let's say I want to sign up or get a quote from you or some consulting, right here before we let you go.
Yeah, absolutely. So the one website I do want to plug is securingcannabis.education. That's the website for our book, and then you can reach us on Instagram at CC Security Solutions. And then TLBC's website is tlbcsecurity.com. And if I'm hard to find, like I said, then I need to talk to my SEO folks.
No, you're pretty easy to find for the most part. Just take the time to do it, and you are always really good about responding. So I appreciate you with doing that as well.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate this. This was fun.
Yes, yes. We hope to see you back, and if we don't get you back before August, we will see you out on the field. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you guys subscribe and comment below. Peace.